Hello world. So, Facebook has changed their settings and no longer saving live videos for more than 30 days. So, we're going to start live streaming our book reads through YouTube and then sharing the YouTube videos to Facebook. The issue being is that we went to go click today, and when we clicked, it told us we had to wait 24 hours until we could actually do our first live stream recording on YouTube, even though we've had our YouTube account and membership for 15 plus years. So yeah, go figure on that one. But for the reading, I am going to be going back through and we'll be reading Anthony Burgess's A Clockwork Orange. So this here is just going to be the small introduction video to the live stream book reads and the introduction to A Clockwork Orange. I have done this before in the past with some live reads, and I had started Clockwork Orange on Facebook, got 8 chapters in, and then just got away from it. Life got in the way, and I never got back to it. Myself, I have a hard time sitting down and reading a book. Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicles series, all the way up until Pandora and beyond, beyond Nemnock the Devil into Pandora and Utero the Vampire. Those were the last ones I read. And those were stories that I loved. I loved her writing style. It fit so perfectly and well with what I could read, how I enjoy reading, and so I was able to read through that whole, series. Clive Barker. I love Clive Barker's writing style. The books of blood. Those were gruesome, grotesque horror books, but just the visceral nature of the style of his writing is what I enjoyed so much. Same with Stephen King, where Gerald's Game, I almost vomited in my throat kind of thing, listening in my mind's eye the representation of his words, how he wrote when the dog comes into the bedroom and starts to rip and tear at the body on the floor, and just I could picture the dog doing that. I could hear the ripping and the tearing as she's going into terror, handcuffed to the bed. Is the dog going to come to eat her next? That's the lovely thing about books, that it allows you to get into that mind of what was happening and occurring, for what that representation of thought process the author is trying to get across to you. Some do it well, some not so well. The Bourne ones. I think it's the guy that wrote the Bourne books, or that really famous author, Michael Crichton. Just could never, I tried reading one of his books, just couldn't get into his writing style. There was one other more recent present-day author that I found that I somewhat enjoyed, but I can't remember what his name is. Anyway, I'm rambling, getting off the focus. The focus is Anthony Burgess. Oh, well, I should really think. I'm pointing to the microphone. Haha. Camera, this way. Anthony Burgess's A Clockwork Orange. I want things to be more prim and proper when we get to the next readings, so those will be done, straight through, read to read, none of this extra BS, malarkey, whatever. That's what this video is about, is the BS, malarkey, and whatever. So, Anthony Burgess's A Clockwork Orange. Anthony Burgess has been called one of the very few literary geniuses of our time. Certainly he borrowed from no other literary source than himself. The source produced 32 novels, a volume of verse, 2 plays, and 16 works of nonfiction, together with countless musical compositions, including symphonies, operas, and jazz. His most recent work was A Mouthful of Air, Language, especially English. Anthony Burgess died in 1993. A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. Introduction. A Clockwork Orange Resucked. I first published the novella A Clockwork Orange in 1962, which ought to be by far enough in the past for it to be erased from the world's literary memory. It refuses to be erased, however, and for this the film version of the book made by Stanley Kubrick may be held chiefly responsible. I should myself be glad to disavow it for various reasons, but this is not permitted. I receive mail from students who try to write these theses about it, or requests from Japanese dramaturges to turn it into a sort of knob play. It seems likely to survive, while other works of mine that I value more bite the dust. This is not an unusual experience for an artist. Rachmaninoff used to groan because he was known mainly for a prelude in C-sharp minor which he wrote as a boy, while the works of his maturity never got into the programs. Kids cut their pianistic teeth on a marionette in G, which Beethoven composed only so that he could detest it. I have to go on living with A Clockwork Orange, and this means I have a sort of authorial duty to it. I have a very special duty to it in the United States, and I had better now explain what this duty is. Let me put the situation badly. A Clockwork Orange has never been published entire in America. The book I wrote is divided into 3 sections of 7 chapters each. Take out your pocket calculator, and you will find that these add up to a total of 21 chapters. 21 is the symbol of human maturity, or used to be, since at 21 you got the vote and assumed adult responsibility. Whatever is symbology, the number 21 was the number I started out with. Novelists of my stamp are interested in what is called arithmology, meaning that number has to mean something in human terms when they handle it. The number of chapters is never entirely arbitrary. Just as a musical composer starts off with a vague image of bulk and duration, so a novelist begins with an image of length, and this image is expressed in the number of sections and the number of chapters into which the work will be disposed. Those 21 chapters were important to me, but they were not important to my New York publisher. The book he brought out had only 20 chapters. He insisted on cutting out the 21st. I could, of course, have demurred at this and taken my book elsewhere, but it was considered that he was being charitable in accepting the work at all, and that all of the New York or Boston publishers would kick out the manuscript on its dog ear. I needed money back in 1961, even the pittance I was being offered as an advance, and if the condition of the book's acceptance was also its truncation, well, so be it. So there is a profound difference between A Clockwork Orange, as Great Britain knows it, and the somewhat slimmer volume that bears the same name in the United States of America. Let us go further. The rest of the world was sold the book out of Great Britain, and so most versions, certainly the French, Italian, Spanish, Catalonian, Russian, Hebrew, Romanian, and German translations have the original 21 chapters. Now, when Stanley Kubrick made his film, though he made it in England, he followed the American version, and, so it seemed to his audience outside America, ended the story somewhat prematurely. Audiences did not exactly clamor for their money back, but they wondered why Kubrick left out the denouement. People wrote to me about this, included much of my latter life has been expended on Xeroxing statements of intention and the frustration of intention, while both Kubrick and my New York publisher coolly bask in the rewards of their misdemeanor. Life is, of course, terrible. What happens in that 21st chapter? You now have the chance to find out. Briefly, my young thuggish protagonist grows up. He grows bored with violence and recognizes that human energy is better expended on creation than destruction. Senseless violence is a prerogative of... That's a bad word to just try to say right now. Prerogative. Nope, still doesn't sound right. Senseless violence is a prerogative of youth, which has much energy but little talent for the constructive. In dynamism has to find an outlet in smashing telephone kiosks, derailing trains, stealing cars, and smashing them, and, of course, in the much more satisfactory activity of destroying human beings. There comes a time, however, when violence is seen as juvenile and boring. It is the repertoire of the stupid and ignorant. My young hoodlum comes to the realization of the need to get something done in life, to marry, to beget children, to keep the orange of the world turning in the rockers of bog or hands of God. Rookers of bog or hands of God, and perhaps even create something, music say. After all, Mozart and Mendelssohn were composing deathless music in their teens or nadstats, and all my hero was doing was razazzing and giving the old in-out. It is with a kind of shame that this growing youth looks back on his devastating past. He wants a different kind of future. There is no hint of this change of intention in the 20th chapter. The boy is conditioned, then deconditioned, and he foresees with glee a resumption of the operation of free and violent will. I was cured all right, he says, and so the American book ends. So the film ends too. The 21st chapter gives the novel the quality of genuine fiction, an art founded on the principle that human beings change. There is, in fact, not much point in writing a novel unless you can show the possibility of moral transformation, or an increase in wisdom, operating in your chief character or characters. Even trashy bestsellers show people changing. When a fictional work fails to show change, when it merely indicates that human character is set, stony, unregeneratable, then you are out of the field of the novel and into one of the fable of the allegory. The American or Kubrickian Orange is a fable. The British or world one is a novel. But my New York publisher believed that my 21st chapter was a sellout. It was very, very British, don't you know? It was bland, and it showed a Pelagian unwillingness to accept that a human being could be molded of unregenerable evil. The Americans, he said in effect, were tougher than the British and could face up to reality. Soon they would be facing up to it in Vietnam. My book was Kennedian and accepted the notion of moral progress. What was really wanted was a Nixonian book with no shred of optimism in it. Let us have evil prancing on the page and, up to the very last line, sneering in the face of all he inherited. Beliefs, all the inherited beliefs, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and holy roller, about people being able to make themselves better. Such a book would be sensational, and so it is. But I do not think it is a fair picture of human life. I do not think so because, by definition, a human being is endowed with free will. He can use this to choose between good and evil. If he can only perform good or only perform evil, then he is a Clockwork Orange, meaning that he has the appearance of an organism lovely with color and juice, but is in fact only a clockwork toy to be wound up by God or the devil, or, since this is increasingly replacing both, the almighty state. It is as inhuman to be totally good as it is to be totally evil. The important thing is moral choice. Evil has to exist along with good in order that moral choice may operate. Life is sustained by the guiding opposition of moral entities, the grinding opposition of moral entities. This is what the television news is all about. Unfortunately, there is so much original sin in us all that we find evil rather attractive. To devastate is easier and more spectacular than to create. We like to have the pants scared off of us by vision of cosmic destruction, to sit down in a dull room and compose the Missa Saliminus or the Anatomy of Melancholy does not make headlines or news flashes. Unfortunately, my little squib of a book was found attractive to many because it was as odorous as a crateful of bad eggs with a mimosa of original sin. It seems priggish or Pollyannish to deny that my intention in writing the work was to titillate the nastier propensities of my readers. My own healthy inheritance of original sin comes out in the book, and I enjoyed raping and ripping by proxy. It is the novelist's innate cowardice that makes him depute to imaginary personalities the sins that he is too cautious to commit for himself. But the book does also have a moral lesson, and it is the weary traditional one of the fundamental importance of moral choice. It is because this lesson sticks out like a sore thumb that I tend to disparage A Clockwork Orange as a work too didactic to be artistic. It is not the novelist's job to preach, it is his duty to show. I have shown enough, though the creation of an inverted lingo gets in the way, another aspect of my cowardice. Nadstat, a Russified version of English, was meant to muffle the raw response we expect from pornography. It turns the book into a linguistic adventure. People preferred the film because they are scared, rightly, of language. And I will admit that reading through the Cockney and the Nadstat that he puts into this, whoo, boy, it's an adventure and then some, so you'll enjoy the show. I don't think I have to remind readers what the title means. Clockwork oranges don't exist except in the speech of old Londoners. The image was a bizarre one, always used for a bizarre thing. He's as queer as a clockwork orange meant he was queer to the limit of queerness. It did not primarily denote homosexuality, though a queer, before restrictive legislation came in, was the term used for a member of the inverted fraternity. Europeans who translated the title as Aranata a Orangeria or Orange Mekapa could not understand its Cockney resonance, and they assumed that it meant a hand grenade, a cheaper kind of explosive pineapple. I mean, it too stands for the applications of a mechanistic morality to a living organism oozing with juice and sweetness. Readers of the 21st chapter must decide for themselves whether it enhances the book they presumably know, or is really a discardable limb. I meant the book to end in this way, but my aesthetic judgment may have been faulty. Writers are rarely their own best critics, nor are critics quo scripte, said Pontius Pilate when he made Jesus Christ the King of the Jews. What I have written, I have written. We can destroy what we have written, but we cannot unwrite it. I leave what I wrote with what Dr. Johnson called frigid indifference to the judgment of that 0.000000001 of the American population which cares about such things. Eat this Swedish segment or spit it out. You are free. Written November 1986. Probably before most of you were even born. A Clockwork Orange. Part 1. What's it going to be then, eh? There was me, that is Alex, and my 3 droogs, that is Pete, Georgie, and Dim. Dim being really dim. And we sat in the Krivka milk bar, making up our Rostocks, what to do with the evening. A flip-dop chill winter bastard through joy. The Krover milk bar was a milk plus misto,
and you may, oh my brothers, have forgotten what these mesters were like. Things changing so scory these days, and everybody very quick to forget. Newspapers not being read much neither. Well, what they sold there was milk, plus something else. They had no license for selling liquor, but there was no law yet against prodding some of the new veshes about which they used to put into the old moloko. So you could peat it with a velekat, or synthesek, or a drinkarum, or one or two other veshes, which would give you a nice quiet horror show, 15 minutes, admitting Borg and all his holy angels and saints in your left shoe, with lights bursting all over your muzzog. Or you could pet milk with knives in it, as we used to say, and this would sharpen you up and make you ready for a bit of dirty 20-1. And that was what we were peating this evening. I'm starting off with the story with. And we'll be doing chapter by chapter live stream book reading. I don't know how often, but to get through and fully read the whole novel ourselves, which we have never done, of Anthony Burgess's A Clockwork Orange. Love y'all.